So what is aggression? Aggression is the intentional harm to another person. That could be physical harm or that could be emotional harm. And we're going to talk about different examples. So we know that as you get older, generally speaking, your levels of aggression decline. They sort of peak in the preschool years. This is in part because preschoolers really do not have emotional stability. They're kind of all over the place. And then on top of that, they can't really communicate well. So they can't always say what it is that they want, what it is that they need, etc. And so sometimes they use aggression in order to express those things. But as they get older and they have better communication skills, that tends to decline. So we're going to talk about two types of aggression. The first one is instrumental and the second one is relational. Instrumental means that you engage in aggression to get something specific. That could be a specific toy, an activity, etc. And relational means that you engage in the aggression. There's no physical aggression that takes place, and it's usually to hurt someone else's feelings. So instrumental aggressions tends to be more common in boys, and relational aggression tends to be slightly more common in girls, just slightly. So instrumental would be like if, let's say, Robert had a truck that Jacob wanted. Jacob might punch Robert to get access to the truck. Relational aggression would be like, I'm sure we all remember the famous words when we were in childhood, "You're not my friend anymore," right? That was meant to strike pain in the other person. May not sound like much now, but definitely in preschool years it was painful. So we're also going to talk about some of the ways that violence is shown in some of the relationships and how we learn to behave in a violent manner. So let's talk about social learning theory. According to social learning theory, we learn whatever it is that we know from our environment. So the things around us, the models that we have, and I brought this up earlier when I talked about morality. So according to social learning theory, children learn to be aggressive by seeing aggressive models. Those aggressive models could be people in their lives, like their parents or their sister or their siblings, or it could even be things like TV shows or movies. For example, I let my children watch the Minions movie. I have toddlers. After they watch the Minions movie, like a few times, they begin to reenact the Minions on each other, right? I should have seen that coming because I know about this, but here we are. So they are not watching Minions anymore just because I don't want to have to pull them apart. And so this relates to what we're about to talk about, which is the Bobo doll study. I have attached a video of the Bobo doll study, but essentially what happens is that children are exposed to aggressive models and then they are frustrated. So those children are made to feel frustrated by taking away all of their toys. And then we watch what types of behavior they engage in. If they didn't see aggressive models, they are less likely to aggress towards the toy. However, if they did see aggressive models, they are more likely to aggress towards the toy. And what's even wild, or more wild, is that they start to figure out new ways to be aggressive, not just the ones that were modeled, which is very similar to what we see in morality. If you have a moral model, you not only copy that moral model's exact behaviors, but you also start to do things that were not modeled, but that are related or similar. So that is social learning theory and aggression. We watch and we learn. So next we're going to talk about how common aggression is in families. We know that aggression occurs in 1/4 or 25% of all marriages. I've actually connected a video about the CDC information when it comes to marriage and abuse. We know that when women are killed, we often think that, like if you watch TV, you might often feel like women are killed by strangers or by people that they don't know. But first of all, most of us are murdered by people we know and people we live next to. But more than half of the women who were killed by a partner. Okay? You could actually look up the statistics per state. The last time I looked it up, I think we looked it up in class last semester, before the pandemic, we were all in class, and Louisiana was number 3 or 4. So you can look it up, the statistics, to see if we have changed. I'm sure things have gotten worse because of the pandemic, more people being home, so you could look into that and see what you find. There are many things that contribute to being more likely to find yourself in that situation, although it is extremely common to be in a domestic violence situation. But people who experienced abuse before are more likely to find themselves in that situation. People who are in a situation where economically it would be difficult for them to leave because they don't make enough money can find themselves in that situation. Normally, when this happens, there's like a very specific cycle. The cycle is so common that is written about. They are one of the first studies actually listened to into the person who committed the violence on the phone while they were in jail and listened to how they bought their way back into that person's heart or their relationship. So the tension building stage, this is like when the person would be walking on eggshells, like they don't know what's going to set the person off. Then the person has verbal abuse, and then acute battering. This could be everything from being kicked, punched, choked to being raped. And we know that if you are choked, that is really associated with murder. Like the people who are choked are much more likely for it to end in a more deadly way. And then finally, after the acute battering incident, so if that was kicked, punched, what have you, you might have loving contrition. So the person might apologize profusely, and they might make it seem like they'll never do it again. They might be really, really sorry that they did it. And then usually with a mix of fear and hope and economic factors, poverty, all those things that we're always talking about, the cycle of violence continues. So we're still talking about aggression, its relationship in families. So we know that these are some factors associated with children who are more likely to be killed and abused. Okay, stressful households, like everything else that we've ever talked about in this class, stepfathers, violence between spouses. So this is if you have domestic violence in the home, that is associated with the higher likelihood that children will be killed. So elder abuse. So what is the most common way, or what are some most common incidents of elder abuse? It's not what you would think. People living in home with their children, they have dementia, they can't always be properly cared for. Sometimes it's just more than what the family can handle. And in those situations, they are likely to experience abuse or neglect.